What's going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. This is an emergency episode of the podcast, if I've ever seen one. Mario Cristobal has been announced as the new head coach at the University of Miami. If you're new here, I'm Max Torres, publisher and lead editor of Ducks Digest, covering the Oregon Ducks for Sports Illustrated on Fan Nation, joined by reporter Dylan Rubenking. If you are watching on the live version of the show here of the podcast on Oregon Football Max Torres on my YouTube channel, thank you for tuning in. And if you are here watching the replay, as always, leave me a comment to give me some of your thoughts about this news. What are your reactions as an Oregon fan? Where do you think Oregon turns next? There's just about a million questions, a million ways we can go with this. But huge news. There have been smoke around this for week, and I don't know if I'd say weeks, but definitely a while. And finally becoming true today. How you feeling about this? Just some of your reactions, Dylan.
I feel guilty only because the last time we talked about Mario Cristobal going to Miami, somebody asked it in one of the last pods, and I said you shouldn't put any validity towards that. I basically told Ducks fans that you shouldn't buy into that, and clearly I was wrong. So for any Oregon fans, I was like, oh, he said it's nothing to worry about, and they rolled with that. I'm sorry, because now it's official, and Oregon's looking for a new head coach again.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I see what you mean on the the apology, but these things are crazy, man. I mean, it's hard to really tell what's going on unless you have the inside track. A lot of these coaching movements, you have to talk to the agent or directly to the school. So, it's a crazy time, and we're all just kind of rolling with the punches here. But we obviously have a lot to talk about. If you guys are here in the chat, here in the stream, definitely throw some questions our way, and we're going to try to answer as many as we can. We said maybe like an hour for this, but we'll see what happens moving forward. But we do have a question here. First question coming from Brandon. Thanks for the question. Hey guys, damn, love the job you both do. What's next up for Coach? Give me some good news, please. Peace. Well, appreciate the kind words, man. No, it's definitely fun doing all this. As far as who's next, I have a story up on Ducks Digest right now that you can go check out, talking about some of the potential candidates that kind of come to mind for me. And the three that I talked about in that story, going to have a hot board coming out later today with some more extended names. But I talked about Joe Brady, the former Carolina Panthers offensive coordinator. I also talked about Matt Campbell, the Iowa State head coach. And then I also talked about Dave Aranda, the Baylor defensive coordinator. So those are kind of three names that we could kind of hop into here. Break some of those guys down and give some thoughts there. I feel like with Brady, obviously he's a young guy. Panthers fired him yesterday, Sunday, December 5th. And I think that the reason that I'm intrigued by him as a potential name for Oregon is you think about the tradition of Oregon. It's definitely branded in the offensive side of the ball. And he, when he was last in college, he just led, I don't know, maybe the greatest college offense that the sport has ever seen. I think that would be huge. And he's a guy that's going to probably attract a lot of attention, generate a lot of buzz with recruits. And I think some people are maybe worried about how Oregon's going to attract offensive talent after the product that they put on the field this year.
Well, Joe Brady's from Florida, so I know some Ducks fans, if they discover that, they might have some issues. But obviously, like you said, he's got NFL pedigree. He's got the LSU championship experience. He's more than qualified for Oregon, and definitely a good fit when you talk about kind of an offensive-minded coach. So when that news came out yesterday on the 5th, and that was immediately what I thought of as soon as I thought of it was, offensive coordinator at least, head coach possibly, and then obviously with everything happening today, I think I like him too. One name I thought of this morning that I just saw somebody tweet about a couple minutes ago is Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. I don't know if he's considering any sort of college coaching positions, because I do know he got a lot of NFL buzz this past offseason. But why not give him a call? I mean, obviously, what he's done with the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. just see if he's, a guy that would be looking to go to college and take over a program. I definitely think he would be a great fit, but obviously, with that Chiefs team and the way that they're starting to roll now, it's no guarantee you can definitely kind of see where his head's at. But I do think he's someone worth reaching out to. In my opinion, I think my favorite candidate is Dave Aranda, who's the head coach at Baylor. He's got a lot of defensive minded positions. He's been defensive coordinator for LSU, Wisconsin, Utah State, Hawaii. He's been all over the place in his 25 plus years in football. So definitely an experienced guy. Has turned a Baylor program around who I actually thought was going to be towards the bottom of the Big 12 this year, and they turned out to be Big 12 champs. So definitely a respectable resume for him, and I think he should be one of the first people that gets the call.
Yeah, the name Bieniemy is certainly interesting. I'm right there with you. I don't know if he would want to go to a college program, especially when you think about how well the Chiefs have been playing. I'm sure that's a name that they're very interested in hanging on to as well. And Dave Aranda, yeah, his defense was obviously much of the talk at Baylor. I think that the biggest thing that comes to mind for me is if you do hire a defensive guy, the biggest concern I think there would be what's the offensive side of the ball look like. Then the offensive coordinator hire becomes that much more important. So I think that Aranda is obviously a guy that is really well respected. All the players there seem to love him. And he's shown that he can get the job done and get some good results on the field pretty darn fast. So winning the Big 12 is no easy task, and having a really solid defense in the Big 12 is a bit of a rarity, right? I feel like you just think about gunslingers, absolute shootout games. People tune into those Big 12 games sometimes, and they're saying, "Where's the defense?" I think about the Mike Leach days at Texas Tech or the Cliff Kingsbury days at Texas Tech. So that's definitely an interesting name to follow here. But we're gonna have more updates on kind of who we're thinking and maybe what we're hearing as this thing kind of keeps going. But we have another question. This one from Tyler Two Chains. Thanks for the question. How many players do you think Oregon will have transfer out of the program? Do you want to start with this one, Dylan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually surprised that it's taking, we've only seen the one decommitment in terms of recruiting. As far as I know, as of 11:37 a.m., Tanner Bailey is the only one to decommit as of right now, quarterback from Alabama. I have not seen anybody enter the transfer portal, but I do expect a few. I wouldn't be surprised if you see some today as of the time of this recording on the 6th. Honestly, it's, this is such a young team that I would not be surprised if it's more than a lot of people think, just because of how much young talent we didn't get to see this year that was playing behind some of the starters and, had that attachment to Cristobal and maybe want to follow him. That's another thing that, I've kind of been thinking about, like how many people are going to follow him or maybe, go to USC with Lincoln Riley or another school in the Pac-12. And then, the coaching staff, it was talked about in the press conference with Rob Mullins today, are some of those coaches that are really tight knit with Cristobal, are they going to leave too? Like Alex Mirabal, Brian McClendon, excuse me. It's going to be really interesting. But to answer the question, I think there will be probably a handful, but I don't know for sure. I don't have that insider intel.
Yeah, I think it's definitely reasonable to think that we could see some attrition here from the Oregon program. We're already seeing it, excuse me, on the recruiting trail with Tanner Bailey opening things up, like you mentioned, Dylan. He's Oregon quarterback commit, formerly Oregon quarterback commit from Alabama. So I think that could be pretty big. Just looking at Oregon's attempts to get further entrenched in the Southeast. I think another name to watch would be TJ Dudley. I think that he's a really talented linebacker that the Ducks have in the fold. I'm actually trying to see if I can talk to him later today. So we'll have to see what happens there. But I think maybe you see some offensive linemen transfer out, given that that's Mario's position of expertise. So that would kind of stand to reason. But I think the biggest name that everyone has their eyes on now is Ty Thompson. And he tweeted after the news broke, stay the course, which I think, initially would probably be, encouraging. But I mean, you can only glean so much from one tweet, right? You just got to try to think about, where his head's at and kind of what's going on. He lost the offensive coordinator with Joe Moorhead. So he's the biggest name to follow right now because, he really didn't get much of a shot at Oregon this year. But I guess I'm not over. There's some people in the Oregon fan base that are like happy that Mario's gone. Like I think we've both seen that on Twitter. They were like calling for him to be let go or fired. And that's nonsense to me. You look at the guy and how much he's elevated the program since they went 4-8 in 2016. And I think the results speak for themselves. Could things be better? Absolutely. But the fact that he was able to bring in so much talent speaks to a lot of what he was able to accomplish here. But I say all that because maybe now that he's gone, we see Ty Thompson in the bowl game. I mean, everything's got to be on the table now since they don't have an interim head coach yet. One of the questions here in the chat was talking about, who do you think is going to leave? I think that that's something we could touch on here shortly, but yeah, I think that's one of the few positives that you could probably glean from this is that now that Cristobal is at a new school, kind of stands to reason that the Ducks could play Ty Thompson in the Alamo Bowl and better yet, still hang on to his red shirt.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ty Thompson is kind of the one thing that a lot of Ducks fans have kind of been excited about through all of this confusion and just mania in the last 48 plus hours with the Cristobal news and the Joe Moorhead news. Obviously Oregon fans have been looking forward to seeing him. That's kind of an understatement. And if he's the guy next year, I'm sure he's kind of the piece here, the silver lining for, kind of a head coaching search and an offensive coordinator search. Like he's the guy that Oregon's probably going to want to build around, especially on offense, which is why I think they should go after an offensive-minded coach more so than a defensive-minded coach, is to build around him and so much of the young talent in the running back room, the offensive line, and especially at the receivers and tight ends that, probably got underutilized quite a bit.
That was a thing that I was surprised to see. I mean, the talent that they have at wide receiver sorry, you think you said tight end and running back, but that was one of the questions that we've been talking about is why haven't we seen more from the tight ends kind of throughout the season here, especially down the stretch. When you look at how limited Anthony Brown is as a quarterback, obviously those, short to intermediate routes are probably going to be more in his comfort zone. So I think that stands to reason that, but yeah, we'll just have to keep an eye on who's moving around in the transfer portal, who enters the transfer portal, because obviously heading into next year, since this roster is so young, a majority of these guys are going to be Cristobal recruits now. After he's had his time at Oregon and been able to cycle through some of his own recruiting classes and get his guys here, so that'll be wild. I feel like that's the biggest word that we're kind of using here. Let's see, what do we have here? We have question coming from Tony. Thanks for the question. Chip Kelly with this talent would be great. Lane Kiffin has no buyout. Chip Kelly is definitely a name that a lot of people are going to be talking about here, seeing that he was a former Oregon coach. I think he's been a little underwhelming at UCLA. He's had flashes, but I think that for how coveted of an offensive mind he was after his time at Oregon, it's been kind of underwhelming, especially when you look at having Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who had a great season. But I think overall his time in Westwood with DTR hasn't been as all it's cracked up to be, or lived up to all that hype that was building when he got the job at UCLA. And then Lane Kiffin, I mean, that's a guy that would be really interesting to see come to Oregon, just when you look at how successful his offenses have been and how they're doing in the SEC at Ole Miss, and the success that he's had with Matt Corral. That's kind of just my response to this question from Tony.
Yeah, so I believe Lane Kiffin just signed a contract extension a day or two ago with Ole Miss. So I don't believe that I don't think he's available for any sort of coaching. No, then again, Manny Diaz was a Temple coach for all but 8 minutes a couple years ago. So who knows? I don't know if that's officially been announced. I remember Brett McMurphy posted it out. a couple days ago, and I don't know if it's official. So we'll see about that. But I do know. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, looks like we got some details here from Sports Illustrated's Ross Dellinger. Don't want to cut you off, Dylan. Just trying to fill in the holes here. Details of Lane Kiffin's new contract per SI Now sources. Starting salary of $7.25 million escalates by $100,000 each year. $7.55 million in final year 2025. Also, support staff salary pool to reach a minimum of $3.5 million. And the last point here on Dellinger's tweet, Kiffin can get as much as a $200,000 bonus if at least 40,000 season tickets are sold. That's kind of an interesting dynamic as far as what's going on with incentives, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's the first time I've ever seen an incentive like that before. It's based solely on season tickets. That's honestly, I'm surprised that we haven't seen that more. Now that I knew that was even a thing that was possible. But going back to Chip Kelly, I think one thing that kind of pushes me away from bringing him back to Eugene would be that obviously when he was at Oregon the first time, he was kind of a revolutionary mind, kind of as you led to offensively. And now in the last couple years, it just seems like in the college ranks, so many people are trying to replicate what he built at Oregon just because it was so unstoppable. I just don't think that there's something there that Oregon could take that's kind of new and would be better than what he did before and kind of keep elevating the standard. I don't think at this point he would be better than Mario Cristobal was, to be honest, based on what we've seen from UCLA. Now, obviously, Oregon is, doing a lot better recruiting wise than UCLA is, and they have more talent. But I just think as a coach, as an offensive mind, I don't know if he is the right fit right now in this day and age with this Oregon program. But it depends on how everything else goes, right? If Dave Aranda stays put, if Kalani Sitake is another name with BYU, if he doesn't go anywhere, then maybe he's kind of a last resort. But I was talking to you a couple nights ago. I just have this feeling that it's not going to be this big, splashy, big money move name for Oregon for the head coach. I have this feeling that it's going to be a group of 5 Sun Belt Conference USA coach, maybe an assistant somewhere. One guy I really wanted to see was Zach Kitley from Western Kentucky, but he just got the OC job at Texas Tech. And he's a very young, very awesome offensive mind. So I was looking forward to seeing him maybe be in the conversation, but he's off to the Big 12.
You talk about Chip Kelly maybe not really fitting or being as effective, I think is the point you were getting at in this age of college football. A lot of people talk about how after he was so innovative at Oregon with the spread offense, how the rest of college football caught up. And I also think, I don't know if I'd call it a red flag, but a question mark with Kelly would certainly be recruiting. I mean, he wasn't known for recruiting when he was at Oregon, and nobody is recruited at the level that Mario Cristobal did when he was at Oregon. So that would be something to consider. Obviously, I saw one of the comments saying that someone thinks that Kelly would dominate with the talent that Oregon has on its roster, which is a good point, but it is really, really young talent. And then you also talk about potentially having to change schemes. But I think whatever they do, it'd be nice to see, more of a emphasis on the passing game. But at the end of the day, I think it's good for Oregon to be a run first team. But obviously if you're running that much because you're limited in the passing attack, I don't think that's good, but we probably all think that at this point. Moving along, question from Dustin Yu. Thanks for the question. How many assistants do you think Mario takes with him? I hope we keep McClendon. This is kind of the next big one for Oregon fans and Oregon in this whole saga. I feel like it's fair to call it that, even though Mario Cristobal was saying he was giving us a hard time for creating narratives. That was one of the tweets that I saw. I think it was from Matt Preem at 247, just saying, "Oh, shame on us for." Or maybe it was Zach Neal with Duckswire, but it was like basically just saying like, yeah, there was definitely some stuff there. So we were just doing our jobs. But yeah, so with this, Rob Mullins talked about this in his press conference today. I know you were there, Dylan, as well. And he was talking about how some of the assistants are still traveling and he rattled off some names. I'm trying to look at my tweet because I know that I tweeted about it. Okay, here we go. Mullins mentioned some of the Oregon staff, including names like Alex Mirabal, Brian McClendon, and Bobby Williams, are currently on flights, and he hasn't been able to talk to them directly. So these are obviously some names to watch to go with Cristobal. I think the biggest one off the top that you have to think about is Alex Mirabal, right? He's an offensive line guy. Cristobal repeatedly refers to him as the best in the business. He's also a Florida native. They've been friends for forever. So I think that he would probably be the most obvious guy that would potentially go there. But Mullins was saying, I want to let those guys announce themselves when that news does come out. So he's going to be big. And you obviously look at how effective he's been on the recruiting trail for the Ducks. He was instrumental in landing the commitment of Kelvin Banks and numerous other guys along the offensive line. So that's huge. We have to see what comes from that. And then Bobby Williams is another guy that I believe has Florida ties. I know Rod Chance has Florida ties. So it's kind of crazy when you think about it, because all these staffers had Oregon ties and they never got back into Florida except for Brennan Dorless, right? If you look at him. So I think that's pretty surprising. But I'm trying to find out right now if Bobby Williams does have Florida roots. But what was I going to say? I think McClendon. You talk about McClendon. I think with all the talent that the Ducks have been getting at wide receiver, obviously they haven't really been utilized to their full potential. I think that he would be a huge guy to keep on the staff. Okay, this Wikipedia says that Bobby Williams is from St. Louis. So check that. But he was according to Wikipedia, he was assistant head coach at St. Thomas Aquinas High School, which is a powerhouse high school in Florida that a lot of people know about. So those are kind of my initial thoughts on, as far as people potentially following him and kind of what that picture's looking like.
I believe Bobby Williams was also the running backs coach for the Miami Dolphins for a year or two, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe there's a tie there. But I think Mirabal was the one where, as soon as that question was asked in that presser, I hadn't even thought about that until that point. And Mirabal, I was like, oh, I don't know if Mirabal sticks around, because, like you said, he's like, they're as tight of friends as you're going to find on this coaching staff, because Mirabal and Cristobal have been friends since high school. They were high school teammates. They were coaching together at Florida International and now all 4 years at Oregon. I just don't see Mirabal sticking behind after Cristobal goes to Miami, because that's a huge opportunity for Mirabal, or Alex Mirabal as well. And I do think that Miami could definitely use that help, given they were pretty ineffective running the ball. I think they were like in the 90s in the FBS and rushing offense, gave up 2.5 sacks a game. So I do think that they need some help there. And Mirabal, like you said, Cristobal says all the time that he's the best in the business. A lot of the recruits that I've talked to, I know you have as well, have said, I came here because of Alex Mirabal and, the vision that he has for me and, just the way he sees the game, breaks down film. I would be honestly afraid for the class with the offensive line depth if he was to go with Mario Cristobal, because I know for a fact a couple people have said that they came to Oregon because of Mirabal more than anybody else. So I would hate to see him go. Same with McClendon. I feel like if McClendon goes, might see one of those super talented receivers maybe enter the transfer portal, because I know they talked very, very highly of him, and for good reason, because he's a very good developer of receivers. But you just kind of think of a lot of these young guys. I mean, now you're talking about a third offensive coordinator in 3-4 years. I think I saw a stat that said Oregon hasn't had a season where they've had they had returning head coaches, offensive coordinators, and defensive coordinators since 2014, I believe, which was when they went to the playoff.
Okay, gotcha. Now that's a little interesting tidbit. I feel like I'm always finding that in your writing, so I'm not surprised to hear it pop up here on the stream or on the podcast.
Thank Twitter.
Exactly. Another question coming from Sam Kim. Thanks for the question. It seemed all but done after listening to Mario after the Utah game. Why not give Wilcox a shot with a monster budget for an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator? Yeah, Wilcox, I think, obviously everyone probably knows, talking about Cal, is Justin Wilcox. He's a name that we're hearing a lot, seeing a lot on Twitter. I mean, I guess I wanted to start off with just that post-game press conference at Utah after the Utah game. God, I mean, I feel like I wasn't even in Salt Lake for that one. I was watching that on my TV in the living room. As much as I wanted to be there, I had to stay back. But God, I swear I could just reach through the screen and just grab hold of all the tension, like just Mario's demeanor after a loss, as you would expect with any head coach, is totally different, right? And then that he knew about all these things going on with him in Miami, and it was just he had all those. I mean, I'm not surprised to see him leave. I mean, you think about what Rob Mullins said about talking to Mario really throughout the night leading into this decision. I think that it shows you that it was probably closer than people thought. At least it wasn't like Miami's calling, like, done deal. Like, I think the fact that it took this long for the decision to come after everything started circulating last week shows you how close of a decision it was. But in reality, you look at everything that was at play, and I think that it makes sense that he's doing it. But also, I mean, it's just such a bizarre situation with Miami just firing Manny Diaz on Monday morning, and then I don't know if have they hired an athletic director since this news broke. I don't think that I've seen it.
Not officially, but I know the Clemson athletic director's name has been thrown around for the last week, but I've not seen anything official yet.
Okay, well, that's something to follow to see if they do that, because a lot of people are saying, even though there's all of these really good factors at play, how do you join a program like that with confidence after this has been handled so poorly, as far as just with regard to Manny Diaz, just giving him some decency. And then, kind of with that, I was tweeting about how Mullins said that he never got reached out to by anyone from Miami to talk to Cristobal when things were initially getting off the ground, and how that's a common courtesy in the business. I'm not trying to insinuate anything, but I mean, I'm not surprised that happened, as bizarre as it sounds, because this year in college football has been anything but normal.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in the press conference with Rob Mullins today, I could definitely tell that there was more to the story, that like some sort of monster under the sheets, if you will, that was just not being discussed. Because I have a tweet that I wrote from the press conference about Miami's interest, and he said, obviously the University of Miami made it clear, I won't comment on the ways, but that Mario was a person of interest. We've been well aware of it. We understand that's the alma mater, that's home, all the elements that go into it. Just the way he said that, and the way he had to like catch himself about the ways in which they were interested. I feel like aside from the Manny Diaz situation, which obviously that was just tough. I mean, imagine being Manny Diaz and going on Twitter and just saying, oh, Miami's got a new head coach, but they've still got one under contract. Like, imagine just trying to figure out, he's already been through the whole thing with Miami and Temple, and they announced that job, and then he went back to Miami, and now this. Like, God, what a career Manny Diaz has had in the last couple of years alone. But I just feel like there's something there that's not being spoken about, that's just really off about the way Miami went about this. And we've known for quite a while that if Manny Diaz was to be on his way out to get the boot, that Cristobal was going to be in the conversation. Like, I feel like even before the end of this regular season, Manny Diaz has been on the hot seat for quite a while because he's just been underwhelming. And so you knew that Cristobal, alma mater, hometown, that's where his family is, had to know his name was going to be there. I don't think Cristobal necessarily expected it based on what Mullins said today. I'm just sad that it all just happened the way it did with Manny Diaz. And I've seen some of the parents, players saying that, they didn't know about the whole departure thing until they had their meeting this morning. Yeah, it's just a crazy, crazy situation. But to go back to the question here, with Justin Wilcox, I go back and forth on Justin Wilcox because he's had a lot of success in his career. Going back to Wisconsin, being the defensive coordinator there, he has some Pac-12 experience as an assistant as well. I believe he was a UW's defensive coordinator for, I think it was just 1 year, USC as well. And then the last few years at California. California, I think, has been a very underwhelming program. to say the least, under Justin Wilcox. I do think their lack of talent at a lot of positions kind of speaks more to that. And then injuries and just the Pac-12 being as cannibalistic as we've talked about all year. I just don't know if he's shown enough to me that he can lead a program like Oregon. I do think he's a good coach. I don't know if that step up is worth kind of forking over the bag for, given what we've seen.
Yeah, and I think that you see this as an option because he has Oregon ties.
Mm-hmm.
He's from Eugene. He played football at Eugene or at Oregon, but I just feel like they could do better, especially when you look at how poorly Cal has been doing. And I wouldn't really want to see this hire because it just seems like it's kind of a safe hire. You look at how Miami's spinning the Cristobal hire about coming home. He's where he's supposed to be. Like that makes a lot of sense. But like look at what talent is available in Miami in the state of Florida. I mean, I'm not trying to rag on Justin Wilcox, but if they were to spin it as a homegrown hire at Oregon, coming home, like welcome back, hometown hero, it's like, there's not a lot of talent in Oregon. I mean, there's definitely good players and good coaches that I'm sure have come out of here, but it's on its totally different level in Florida and at Miami. So I think that it's going to be hard for them to make the big splash hire that is so commonly discussed because of the timing of this and how so many coaches are already signed at new places or re-signed where they were coaching during the year. And I think a lot of that is largely attributed to Lincoln Riley coming to USC. I feel like he was the first major coaching domino to fall in all this.
Yeah, and I think another thing to kind of think about here on top of that is just how quickly this is probably not going to take, because I feel like a lot of people are expecting it to be this week that they announce a new head coach for Oregon. Given what we've seen in the coaching carousel already, Notre Dame quickly named Marcus Freeman the head coach, the Brian Kelly, like it all happened so quickly, it seemed that a lot of people were just like, oh, Oregon's going to make their decision right away. And given, like you said, the timing of it, where this program is in terms of recruiting and being, on the brink of a college football playoff for the last couple years, I feel like they're really going to take their time and make sure that this program's not going to take a step down, given this coaching, this move with Cristobal leaving and probably a good chunk of, I would assume, a good bit of assistance leaving as well. Because obviously, a lot of the players are going to be confused with, all the coaching changes around them and just where this program is. It doesn't feel like they should be going through this right now. And so I think that Oregon's going to take a good bit of time to figure out who's going to lead this football team based on, what Rob Mullen said alone. But just given, in the past, the Cristobal hire took a little bit less time. I think that's another reason why a lot of people think it's going to happen quickly, just because the Taggart thing, which I'm not going to talk about today, especially. But Cristobal was an internal hire. I'm not expecting this to be an internal hire this time, given how many assistants might leave with Cristobal.
Sure.
And behind, the ones that might stick behind probably don't have as much experience with the program. So I do think that it's going to be an external thing. Do they stay West Coast? Do they go outside the box like I'm expecting? Who knows? But I don't think it's going to be quick.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like when you're looking at the timeline and, is it going to be quick? It's very relative because we are 9 days away from the early signing period. You want to hire a coach to give these commits that are still waiting to see what happens some confidence, but you don't want to jump the gun and just hire somebody to hire somebody. And I don't think that that's the case. Rob Mullins has been doing this for a while. And that was one of the questions that I asked him today in the press conference. What have you learned from going through this process before? Obviously, promoting Mario, in 2017 it was, and then hiring Willie Taggart. He was saying that, I learned that this is a really, really appealing job, and Oregon football is a job that a lot of people are going to want to come after. he was saying, he was telling me, his phone's been blowing up with people, reaching out. So that's good to hear, but I think you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, just looking at all the names that are kind of obviously, like what you're saying, off the board. But with some people like Dave Aranda, we're still waiting to see official word, I believe, at least as of the recording of this podcast around noon, what's going to go on there. He's expected to sign a new contract, but maybe that's a name that Oregon can kind of get back in the race for, because I think that Oregon's probably a better job than Baylor. But I don't know Aranda super well as far as that goes. With maybe bringing him back. Got another question here from Michael Lara. Thanks for the question, Michael. He said, since Mario originally hired Marcus Arroyo and Andy Avalos, now head coaches, as his coordinators, shouldn't the Ducks have them high on the short list? You want to tackle this one?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I think one of our writers brought up Avalos yesterday or the day before. I don't know, given what we saw from Marcus Arroyo as an offensive coordinator, and how tough it's been to kind of get his feet on the ground in UNLV and get that program running. I don't know if that would be an immediate phone call. I do think that they'll probably be in the conversation, but I think just because it's been a year and a COVID year, I don't know if it's I think they'll probably be on the list, but I don't know how highly I would put them. I don't have a lot much more to say on that, but yeah, I think if I had to pick one of the two, I'd go with Avalos, just because I think the Boise State thing, I feel like he's more of an appealing hire, and I think his fit with Oregon, his success at Oregon, was a little more than Arroyo's.
Yeah, I would definitely lean on Avalos being someone that I'd be more confident in, just because Boise State's done better than UNLV has since he's there, which may be too direct of a comparison. But if you just look at how the coaches performed when they were here on their respective sides of the ball, the defense was obviously a lot more dominant. Marcus Arroyo as a play caller was just really, really dry. I mean, I think back to the maddening number of screenplays that we saw when Justin Herbert was here, and then you see him just lighting it up in the NFL. That's pretty upsetting. Yeah. So I can understand why you would want to kind of circle around and maybe ask those guys, but I feel like they could do better, but definitely better than Marcus Arroyo at this stage. And yeah, I don't really see a whole lot of reason to bring him back. That's kind of just my thoughts there. Let's see, looking for some more questions here. We're getting a lot of them, so just trying to see what's going on here as far as which ones we could maybe see here. Okay, this question is coming from Chunky Monkey. Thanks for the question. What is Oregon's screen process to avoid this happening for a third time? That is the $1 million question, and I think that was asked in the press conference. I'm just going to try to go back to my notes here real quick, Dylan.
Yeah, I believe it was.
Just because it's a reasonable question, right? Why does this keep happening? How do you get somebody that is going to be around for a while? So I'm trying to see my notes here. I was recording it, and he was asked, obviously with the past two coaches leaving for Florida, with Willie Taggart and Mario Cristobal, is there something you can look for? Can you kind of address, what goes into trying to hopefully keep a coach for the long term? And just want to say, I'm paraphrasing here because the transcription service isn't always super accurate. But Mullins was saying, we'll consider those two situations. We're keeping those in mind. With Mario here for 4 years, he had a lot of success, and you want to create a culture that you're recruited at a high level and produce results on the field. Let's see. And you want to maintain some continuity for sure, but Mullins was saying that the priority was to find a strong leader that others would obviously be interested in, because that means that you're having success and you're doing it the right way. So I think that you hear that, and it kind of goes hand in hand with what we're hearing as far as getting someone who's highly coveted, and maybe some of these big names that are still out there and maybe still a possibility.
Well, anybody with ties in Florida, I think is gonna draw some criticism. People are gonna be a little weary now because it's happened twice. But in all seriousness, I do think that those two instances are definitely going to be on their mind. And I don't think it's necessarily like crazy that this has happened a couple of times, especially given that both of them, like you said, they had a dream job of, Tiger going to Florida State, Cristobal going back to Miami. I think the one thing that kind of explained it all was that Rob Mullins was talking about how the dream job kind of fell in Cristobal's lap, and it didn't really sound like Cristobal was expecting that. And I saw reports that that's what he was telling the players at the meeting this morning too. Was he didn't expect to get the offer from Miami, so you never really can tell that this won't happen again, given how crazy college football gets with the coaches and how much money that coaches are starting to get now. You really never can tell how, I don't want to say authentic a coach is or how loyal a coach is to the program. And I don't necessarily want to call Cristobal disloyal. I mean, he definitely put every ounce into this program while he was in Oregon, and he deserves credit for that. But you never really can tell where their head's at and what it would take for them to go elsewhere. So that's not a very good answer to that question at all. But I don't really know if there is one better than what Rob Mullins said.
Yeah, and then just to kind of confirm what you were talking about, some of those reports, one of my sources got back to me and was just talking about kind of what the conversation was like, between Mario and the players. This is what I have. He just said it was really tough for him, but he played there, so it was a big deal for him to go back and coach. He said he never thought he'd leave, but he also never expected the Miami job. So right in line with what we were hearing there. Who just the way this went down was just wild to me. But you hear things like that, and it just validates what we were hearing when he initially got the job, and people were saying, okay, he had the Alabama ties and he came from Florida. So, what's going to happen there as far as potential jobs that he would consider leaving for.
Yeah, I think so many players now, because I think there are still a couple of players on the roster that were from the Taggart era as well. Maybe we're past that now. But yeah, I mean, how do you kind of stay loyal? How do you put everything into a coach knowing that it might not be a long-term thing? It might not take a whole lot for them to leave for another program. That for me, if I was a student athlete in that position, that would be really tough for me to kind of put my trust into a coach that could leave at, if an offer arises. It's really hard to find the Nick Sabans and the Dabo Swinneys. Dabo might be a bad example, but to find those coaches that stick around for so long, the Kirk Ferentz, the Mike Gundys, to stick around for so long, it's a rarity.
It's tough for sure, and I think that a lot of people are thinking, at least I feel like it stands to reason, that maybe you go for a West Coast guy, just someone that isn't going to have something, bigger or like home calling them, where it's harder for them to get out there. Who's to say that his mother's health didn't play some kind of a role here? I feel like that it definitely did. After that Oregon State game in the presser, he was telling us when we were in that press conference that he had to go back and visit his mom who was fighting. So obviously wishing the best for her, but I feel like maybe something like that happens and you feel that family pull just a little bit more. Let's see. Someone brought this up earlier, but I saw a comment in the chat about Williams from USC, thinking that that's Dante Williams.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I would want to take him as a head coach, but I think we're still trying to see kind of what Lincoln Riley's staff looks like at USC. You figured that I think it would be beneficial for Riley to retain him because he's an LA guy, but if that's a guy that Oregon can get back in the running here, especially like I said with Rod Chance having Florida ties, maybe that would be somebody that they could try to, let's say hypothetically, you can talk about hypotheticals all you want, like as this decision was looming, but now that we know, I feel like it's a little bit more appropriate to talk about this, especially when you're looking at who's maybe going to stay and who could go. So say, for example, Rod Chance were to go back to Florida and then, take that job with Cristobal, should he offer it, I think that Dante Williams is definitely someone you should call at USC to just, try to run it back, because their defensive back recruiting was pretty elite when he was here at Oregon.
Yeah, he's done a really good job recruiting at USC too. But yeah, I wouldn't say a head coach call for sure. But I do think defensive backs, there are still some players that played for him. So I think he would be a great pickup if Rod Chance were to leave. I'm trying to think of other people within the West Coast that might be a good call for the head coach. We talked about Sataki. I know you and Nick talked about him a little bit at BYU. I think he's a great fit. I thought he would have been a better fit at Washington, given that I believe he coached there before. I might be wrong on that. But I do think that Oregon, there's still a lot of that Polynesian culture there. There's still a lot of, kind of similar traits and similar schemes. I do think the offense would be better with Sataki. He kind of brings a lot of the same culture that Cristobal does, with a lot of physicality and, in the trenches, especially on the offensive line. So I think he would be a really good call on the West Coast. One guy I was looking forward to maybe seeing in the conversation was Jay Norvell. He did end up taking the job at Colorado State. I did not expect him to stay in the Mountain West. I figured he would have gone to the Pac-12, maybe as an OC or as a head coach somewhere. I don't know. Did you have any other names that you were thinking in the West Coast?
I think one guy I was thinking about, but it was more for the OC job, was I hope I'm not butchering it, Pat Mum or Mame at UNR, Nevada.
Yeah.
Sorry, not Pat, Matt, I think. Let me see. Hold on. I need to just get on the actual roster here. Let me see. Okay, hold on, folks. All right, Matt Mum. Okay, so Mumme. He's the offensive coordinator and the quarterbacks coach. Because you think if you bring in an offensive guy, you want to have somebody who has some experience with some quarterbacks. I feel like that would be a big benefit. And you look at Carson Strong, Dylan. I know you were a huge fan of Carson Strong the entire season, before the season, probably still are now. But he threw for over 4,000 yards, and I believe his TD to interception ratio was something like 38-6, like something crazy. So I don't know if I mean, like I'm saying, I have to do some more digging in here, but that was kind of the last West Coast name that I was thinking might be worth looking into.
So the one thing about him, and kind of the same reason why I was back and forth on Norvell, was just because Nevada was an air raid offense more so than anything else. I think they were dead last in the FBS and rushing yards per carry. Obviously, Oregon's defense or offense in their running back room has much more talent than Nevada's did. So I wouldn't expect an air raid offense to come to Oregon if he was to be the choice. But I don't know if he would necessarily be one of their first calls because of that air raid. I know for sure Oregon wouldn't want to go there, given it's Ty Thompson's first year. They have so much talent in the running back room. I don't think that would be. I don't think that's a choice they would make. But I do like his, like you said, his development of Carson Strong. Carson Strong, in my opinion, was a first-round pick coming in. Maybe fell off a little bit, but I still think he's worthy of being a late first-round pick, early second-round pick for sure. I think as a quarterback developer, that would be one thing that would be something I would draw towards, especially with Ty Thompson as the future of the program, and with Butterfield and Ashford as well in the background.
I think with Tanner Bailey opening things up, it definitely makes things interesting with the recruiting trail. I mean, I feel like so many of the top tier quarterbacks are off the board now. Just where things stand in the calendar year. I was out in the Los Angeles area for the Oregon UCLA game in October, and that was a big kind of topic because I was doing some stuff for SI All American. And one of the guys that I went down there to cover was Justin Martin, who's now committed to UCLA. And he was, at least in our rankings at SI All American, I think he was the last top 10 quarterback that was still available. So I wonder if you're Oregon here, do you just try to play the transfer portal? Because maybe you have a better chance at that point. There were early reports after Spencer Rattler announced that he was transferring that Oregon was going to go after him. And obviously it's been a pretty mixed bag at Oklahoma. Really dominant last year. And, I think he was the odds-on favorite to be the number 1 overall pick heading into the season. So maybe it makes more sense to try to go after him or go after a transfer guy, seeing that, I feel like whoever they try to go after in the 2022 class, it's going to be pretty late. And I don't really know how you spin that after, having I don't know how you spin that without it saying like, hey, you're kind of a backup option, like just being straight up, just because this happened when it did with Bailey opening things up.
Yeah, it's tough because I know they don't have another quarterback in the 2022 class. It looks like going into next year, they have, I believe, still 3. Maybe there's other scout team quarterbacks in the background, but it would be Thompson, Ashford, and Butterfield in the background right now, with Ty Thompson kind of expected to be, the starter. But I think I'm going to echo what a lot of Oregon fans have been talking about since, the Moorhead leaving and everything with Anthony Brown and kind of the struggles we've seen from him. I just want to see a young quarterback develop and just get all the resources that, he deserves. Because look at Justin Herbert. Like you said, play calling with Arroyo was really dry, didn't have the talent that, that Mario, Anthony Brown had this year at the receiver position, tight end position. Had so many drops with Justin Herbert in that 2019 year, especially. So I want to see, with everything around him, with an offensive-minded coach, I want to see what Ty Thompson can do with this roster. So, and I know that bringing in a 2022 quarterback recruit, that wouldn't necessarily say, oh, he's, Ty Thompson can't win the job because there's this other guy here. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, you know, I don't think they should go after a grad transfer or anyone from the transfer portal. Like, I think this job should be Ty Thompson's. I think they should let him know that. Or even if, Butterfield or Ashford, I think they're capable of leading an offense as well, for sure. It's just hard to say because we haven't seen much of any of them. But I from what I've seen, I think Ty Thompson should be the quarterback. That should be the pitch for offensive-minded coaches or really any coach, any offensive coordinators that they're going to interview. He should be kind of the prize. Like, hey, Ty Thompson is looking to be our guy. Let's develop him. Let's bring him what he needs to succeed and, make him the future quarterback of the Oregon Ducks.
Yeah. And then, for people listening on the pod, when this is posted, we're looking at the Twitter post from Ty saying, it's a picture of him and Mario saying, best of luck to you, coach. You created something special here that I'm blessed to have been a part of. Thank you for everything. And to reference what you were saying, Dylan, I feel like when you're juggling the quarterback deal, I think you just got to take any shot you can and try to just add. You just need people here, especially people that are experienced, because say it is Ty Thompson's job at the beginning of next year. He's named the starter and, things are going well. God forbid he get hurt. There's zero depth behind him. That's not a slight to Ashford or Butterfield or anybody else that's going to be on the roster, but that's just the situation right now with Oregon and the quarterback room. There is no proven depth whatsoever, save one half of football from Ty Thompson against Stony Brook earlier in this year. So, the quarterback position is going to be the biggest one to follow, I feel like, for Oregon, both on the recruiting trail and in the transfer portal. And it's got to be the number 2 story outside of, the coaching carousel and who they can get for the head coach and eventually the offensive coordinator spot. I think that's going to be big because we've learned and we continue to learn time and time again that you need elite quarterback play to have a shot in the college football playoff and have a shot at winning a national title, which is ultimately what Oregon wants to do.
Especially in the Pac-12. I mean, it's already hard enough to get the media attention, to get, highly ranked and to get the respect from the committee as a Pac-12 team. And I think that if Oregon had a consistently elite quarterback play, they would be in the playoff. I think that is what a lot of people feel, especially. Not a guarantee, but I do think they would have fared much better against Utah both times if the passing offense was more lethal. and a lot of that talent was used to its full potential. But I do agree with your point about bringing in someone just for having experience and, to give Ty Thompson someone to learn from and Butterfield and Ashford someone to learn from. I agree with that point.
Yeah, so I think that's probably the best approach that they can kind of take right now. Looking in the chat to see if we have any more questions that we can kind of hop on here. So let's check this out. I think there's a lot of aggressive chats here. Some people are upset, understandably so, because you can see it on your end, right?
I can't, but I'm looking at Twitter and I can probably get a feel for how everyone's feeling.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's just a crazy time out here in Eugene. I think
I can
that
actually. I do see the comments now. I didn't know I could look at it over here.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, so it's just a cool way to interact with people and kind of see what everyone's thinking. Yeah, I think I feel like you got to try to stay out west, but it's just hard to limit yourself to that because you look at where the best football is being played, and it's in the South. So it's if you go after somebody that's in the Southeast, you're going for a top tier coach, but you're knowingly stepping into something where you don't know if there's that longevity. And even if you hire somebody and they say that I'm committed and I'm going to be here, you can't take anything at face value now with just the way that the coaching carousel has gone. And people saying that, they haven't talked to anybody. That was definitely false at this point, right? With if you think back to what Mario Cristobal said after that Utah game, how he hasn't talked to anybody, and let's not create narratives here. Obviously talks have been going on, but before that, so it's wild, man. I mean, Oregon's they gotta nail this hire. If I'm USC or anyone else in the Pac-12 really, but especially if I'm USC, I'm just rubbing my hands here and just chomping at the bit because they are poised to make an unbelievable run here in these next 9 days, with who they can potentially still poach from Oklahoma. And then the local talent in LA, you look at Raleek Brown already hopping on board, still looking for that first defensive talent to join. And I got to think that Damani Jackson's right up there now after this hire, elite cornerback out of Modern Day. Looking like it might be, USC is probably right there in the picture now, and then Michigan and Alabama as well.
Yeah, the other day we were talking about where Oklahoma is after Lincoln Riley left for USC, and I talked about preparing Oklahoma for the SEC and keeping them in contention with the college football playoff. I don't think this Oregon job is a lot different because look at the streak they've been on with recruiting. They top the Pac-12 every year. Might not this year, given what USC is doing. And now Cristobal, you might see some decommitments, so that might change. But they're still right there in terms of, you can recruit to Eugene. You can recruit to the University of Oregon. Cristobal proved that. And obviously he is, a phenomenal recruiter himself, and the staff around him, they're all fantastic recruiters. So credit to them completely. But you can recruit to Eugene, Oregon over, Alabama and Auburn and, all of these, Ohio State. Like you can recruit to Eugene. It's a proven fact. And, it might be tougher given that you're playing for a first-year head coach, first-year offensive coordinator, and you have to now compete with USC, and you have no idea what other teams, Utah is still going to be a threat next year. Other teams might step up, and you still have to compete for a 4-team playoff out of, a Pac-12 conference that gets overlooked by pretty much everybody. So the task is as high as any in college football. I think the only one that would have topped it was Oklahoma with the SEC looming. But they made Brent Venables their head coach. And as I'm looking here, another name that I think got tossed around by somebody, Fresno State's offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb. He's now Washington's offensive coordinator and quarterback coach. So he's off the board as a potential West Coast option.
Okay. Yeah, that was actually, I saw that when we were recording, as we were in this podcast. So I'm trying to just there's just so much news going on. It's like one thing happens and another thing happens. So yeah, here's the official from Washington Huskies football, welcoming Ryan Grubb as the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. Makes a lot of sense. Has Jake Haener even announced yet what's going on with him?
Not officially.
Okay. Well, what more do you need? And obviously you have DeBoer going to Washington, but you see this, it's just all the writings on the wall. It's crazy though that he started at Washington and then now he's going to go back, once it happens. It's not final. Don't want to be putting fake information out there, but yeah, if that happens, it definitely sets them up for success. But yeah, there's I think that one of the biggest things, I think that this is a piece I'm probably going to write later, but just about what we learned from the Mario Cristobal era. You can recruit at a super high level to Oregon. We kind of knew that when Willie Taggart was here, right? But it was just re-emphasized that much more when Mario Cristobal was here and just took it up a whole notch. And I think that I just wonder, does someone have to have ties to the South in order for them to get back in there? Because I don't know. Because you got to know how the scene works out there. And it just raises, I think, one of the biggest questions that the Ducks are going to have to answer here is, do you value recruiting prowess more or X's and O's coach more? Like someone who's really good in game? Because clearly that's somewhere that Mario Cristobal wasn't, up to snuff at. That wasn't where he needed to be. And I feel like a lot of Duck fans hearing this, they'll just immediately jump on, we want an X's and O's coach after this. But I think that after seeing Cristobal and what he did here, having elite recruiting just elevates your floor so much more. But it's obviously a super complicated question that you can't answer super easily.
When I've talked to a lot of recruits, a lot of it is about experience as well. Given, there's some of these guys as of right now on the coaching staff that have developed a lot of NFL players at other institutions. Mario Cristobal, obviously, Alabama, and winning national championships at Miami, and being able to recruit at a high level at multiple schools. I think that's one thing that's definitely going to be taking into account is a lot of recruiting experience, a lot of professional experience, coaches that can get guys to the next level. I feel like a lot of the West Coast names that are out there right now, I don't know if anybody can match up with Cristobal. Honestly, I don't know if you're going to find as elite a recruiter as Mario Cristobal was. I think you're going to kind of have to build up from, you're going to take a step back, I think, a little bit in terms of recruiting, because I just think Cristobal was one of the best in the country at it, bar none. But it's going to be really, really tough to see, how to keep that momentum going given everything else happening in the country. And I think one of the names I just came across on Twitter was Pete Carroll. Oh my goodness.
Oh man.
Please.
Who knows? Seahawks are not doing well, but
yeah. No, Pete Carroll, I live in Washington. My family's all Seahawks fans. I watch Seahawks games. No, you don't want Pete Carroll. The dude is beyond his time as a coach, in my opinion.
All right. Well, I don't want to, wrap things up super abruptly, but I don't know if you saw it, Dylan. Apparently, Cristobal is going to go on Canzano's radio show. I think someone said that in the comments earlier. So I think we need to end this here. We had a good hour, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty more discussion here. So we're going to go ahead and listen to that and see what new developments can come out of this. Stay tuned to Ducks Digest for the latest updates on Mario Cristobal's departure and Oregon's pursuit of a new coach, their coaching search. Follow me on Twitter at mtorsports and follow Dylan on Twitter at DRK Sports News. And if you're watching this, we got a lot of people in the chat in the stream. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button for me, trying to grow the channel and do more of these live streams and interact with you guys, and just get more of these videos up on YouTube because it's a super fun platform. But make sure you stay tuned to ducksdigest.com and hit that notification bell so that you get notified whenever I go live the next time, because we got plenty to talk about here. And it looks like the offseason is going to get off to a pretty crazy start here after this bowl game. So stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Ducks Dish podcast, and we'll see you in the next one.